Hi, I'm Grady Collane, the CapeCod.com News Center, and welcome to Sunday Journal. I'm joined today by an expert on transportation with the CCRTA. Do you mind introducing yourself for our listeners?
Tom Cahir, and I'm the administrator for the Cape Cod Regional Transit Authority.
Awesome. Thank you so much again for having this conversation with me. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Grady. Nice talking to you.
So we had quite a few things I wanted to chat about today. The initial pitch for this conversation was to talk more about how the CCRTA, we have some fixed route bus that is going to be permanently free for adults over the age of 60 as well as for people with disabilities. That's something that you guys have been talking about for a while. It's part of an ongoing initiative that has been in the works. But as we were discussing as well, the state has issued a lot of money, $50 million, to help expand EV charging infrastructure. And we figured that'd be a great thing to chat about with you as well. And you've already mentioned a little off mic before we started that there's some stuff going on in the background. But before we dive into that, just want to ask more about this new this great feature for people who are going to be able to ride for free. Can you tell us a little bit more about that initiative?
Well, thank you very much, Grady, and thank you for the opportunity to continue to sort of let folks know across Cape Cod, about this. It's really kind of exciting. For several years now, we meet every Monday as a senior staff, and our team is so wonderful. They display passion every day about effectuating positive change in everything that we do. And we sit and discuss things that we can do better, how things are going, what we all should know about. And it was several years ago when we obviously recognized that there's a very significant older adult population residing on Cape Cod. And I think at the time we were in the top 10 nationally for counties, the median age being as high as it was at the time. And it continues to be an issue. And I've talked with the Cape Cod Commission on several occasions, and the projected numbers going forward over the next several decades suggest that the median age is going to continue to rise. So we recognized 5 or 6 years ago now that senior mobility is something that we can't just gloss over. We need to think about that in a more strategic and in a meaningful way. So 5 years ago, we went to Wednesdays free fares for folks over 60 years of age, and we worked very closely with all the Council on Aging directors in their organization known as COAST. We meet with them a couple of times a year. We talk to them weekly, our senior mobility manager here. So we have a great rapport with our older adult population, and we understand and learn from them as to what the issues of concern are. And obviously transportation is always an issue. So for 5 years now, we've had free fares for seniors over 60 years of age. And just recently, there was a grant opportunity for us, and on one of our Monday morning meetings, we discussed, whether or not we should seek, some of those funds and put it towards expanding that free opportunity for seniors and folks with disabilities. So we applied and were successful in getting a grant for $506,000. And the idea behind it is to have free fares on all of our fixed route services. There are 7 fixed route services that traverse all 15 Cape communities pretty much on an hourly basis. So if you live in Falmouth and you want to go to Provincetown, and you can go out with your wife or your friend or your peers and just get on the bus. And you might have to transfer in Hyannis to go to the Lower Cape, but it's free, and it's something that I think is enjoyable. And we've always had a little ticked up number of ridership on Wednesdays over the years, and we've just initiated this program on February 1st. But we've also at the same time, and I don't want to get too technical or confuse listeners, but
Sure.
we've introduced a new card called the Go card. We've had a Charlie card for many years that people have come in, had their picture taken, and been able to use that to access transportation, not only here on the Cape and on the MBTA and across the Commonwealth. Well, our Go card is even more sophisticated, and we've just unveiled that. And coupled with our announcement on the free fares, we've talked to folks about coming in and getting a new Go card, because that would be the way that they could get onto our buses without any problems. And we've had a huge influx of people coming in. Kathy and Fran here in the office have been running up and down the stairs, registering people. And our senior mobility person has contacted the councils on aging, and we're going to be able to go to the Lower Cape in the next couple of weeks and register more people to get the Go card, so they don't have to come in here. And Kathy suggested they take a picture and send it to us, and we can send them the card. So it's really working out well, and I'm really surprised to some extent the number of people that have been pouring in here since February 1st. And even now, as I walked in, I had a meeting this morning with the Cord and Elder Services of Cape Cod, which was really an exciting forum with all the legislative delegation from the Cape. And we talked about some of these issues, transportation being one. Um, so that's an exciting new initiative that we've also planned along with our free fare. So I think it's a great thing. And even though the grant is 506,000, I've talked and looked extensively with our CFO at the potential for making this go on in perpetuity. And that's really kind of my intention, because the minimal reduction in fares is really not going to impact our budget in any way, as opposed to adding riders that contribute to more federal funds through a NTD formula fund. So I think it's really neat and exciting that people can go to all 15 Cape towns in a fairly efficient manner now and enjoy the scenic vistas along the way. And so it's been in place now for a week, and it's been very, very successful. And my team, of course, here, as they do with everything, really make it customer friendly. And they're doing a great job talking to people about it and walking folks through the new Go card registration. So it's really kind of neat.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, that was my next question, was essentially after a week of having it going on, what was the response that you've seen? I wasn't sure there's been a flood of seniors who've been kind of taking on the new option there, but that's definitely awesome to see. And it is also interesting to hear as well the kind of the funding mechanism that kind of goes into this. It's definitely kind of based more on the ridership, it seems, than it is the actual fares themselves in some cases, though I'm sure fares help. I don't want to diminish that as a possible revenue stream.
Well, it's a state grant program, so it's through MassDOT that the grant was issued. But it's interesting because by increasing our ridership, that contributes to more revenue for us through the federal funds, because we report ridership every month through NTD, which is the National Transit Database. And so it's a wash in terms of letting folks ride for free and not losing any kind of resources. So it's great, and it's an it. And I was reading the other day as I was preparing to talk to somebody about this, and I saw that there are 84,700 and something people 60 years of age or older that live on Cape Cod right now in the wintertime, out of the 218 or 20,000. So that's close to 40% of residents are 60 or over. And with that projected to go up, the median age in some towns, Chatham and other lower Cape, it's up 58, 59 years old now. So we're doing our part to assist in senior mobility, and people are showing their appreciation. A number of folks mentioned it to me this morning that they've heard it on the radio and they've read it in the paper. So I'm very happy that we're able to continue to think outside the box and make our region the best that we can be.
hmm Now, my numbers might be out of date at this point, but I believe actually Barnstable County is the old one of the, if not it is the oldest county demographically outside of Florida. I think Florida is the only place that has counties that have a median age higher than Barnstable County does here in Massachusetts, which is just something definitely of note when it comes to kind of just how to handle all kinds of public services. Now, as well, I did want to chat more about the investments that the state is making, the $50 million in EV charging infrastructure, trying to help out with that battery, the range anxiety some people can face when they're considering an EV vehicle, but this is also for public transit vehicles, the state's fleet itself. But before we move on, is there anything else you wanted to add in on this new initiative to make it a little bit more accessible, local bus fare routes for our older citizens?
No, I thank you for the opportunity to talk about it. I think I mentioned everything that needed to be said. I for many years, going back to my legislative days, always said that Barnstable County was in the top 10 and those other 9 were in Florida. And I think that's pretty much the case as well. But at the forum I attended this morning, which was made up of elder service membership of 200 or so folks, a woman got up and said, we're like second most densely populated adult community. So it's not going down. It's certainly getting more dense with older folks.
hmm hmm
And
Um,
on the matter of the 50 million that the state provided recently for EV charging infrastructure,
yeah.
I was so excited when Kathy told me that you wanted to talk about that a little bit, because it was timely, because just this week, my friend Dan Wolf, former Senator Dan Wolf, called me up and he said, Tom, I'm not certain as to what's going on in terms of regional deployment of EV infrastructure. And we need to get some people in a room and talk about that. So he asked me if I could kind of put folks together. So yesterday afternoon, we had an hour and a half meeting, and I had Paul Nedzwicki from the Cape Cod Chamber, who continues to get phone calls from folks all over the country, because of course the Cape is a tourist destination, and the hotels are, hotels, people that have electric vehicles need to know what the charging capabilities are at the various Airbnbs and hotels. So we had Paul here. We had Terry Gallagher, who's really the foremost outspoken authority on this stuff. He's on the Assembly of Delegates. He's a member of the Assembly of Delegates, and I hadn't really known him well, but I met him a year or so ago, and he came in and shared a lot of very valuable information. And of course, Dan is very smart on a lot of this stuff anyway. He's gone overseas to look at electric planes and everything else. And then this other young man, Sean Hogan, who works for the town of Barnstable, who's doing a lot of their EV infrastructure, was there. So we spoke for, it was very educational and informative for me, because I'm doing a lot of stuff. We're putting in charging infrastructure for our buses, and we've got 11 buses now as we transition over from fossil fuel vehicles. So we're in the process of moving over to electric vehicles in public transportation. But I think the discussion yesterday was about, what about people that just need to drive, come here to visit or just live here and want to go. And you mentioned earlier, Grady, the range anxiety. That's an issue with people. They're beautiful vehicles. They're able to do a lot of things, but the charging of the batteries is not like pulling into a gas station for 20 seconds and throwing 10 gallons of gas in your car. There are different levels of charging capabilities: level 1, level 2, and level 3. And level 2 is the primary charging infrastructure that you see around here on the Cape. We have 24 stations here. We have 10 down at our Dennis Operations Center. Various businesses have them. A lot of the hotels are starting to put a number of them up so that you can charge your vehicle if you stay overnight. But still, level 2 takes 6 or so hours, sometimes 8 hours to get fully charged. And level 1s are if you have an EV in your home and you can charge it home overnight. It really doesn't do much good for the public. And then level 3 is a quicker charge, but it's very, very expensive. And all this new technology is being developed. We're contemplating as an organization here to purchase a couple of level 3s, because as a result of the Volkswagen settlement, we were the recipient of 7 brand new Gillig buses, 35 and 40 seat buses, beautiful new buses, electric buses. So we run 400 square miles across the Cape. So some of our routes, we're going to have to charge in the middle of the route and get another bus to meet. And it's going to be a whole new way of approaching it. But we're ahead of the curve. We've done a very good study with a company from Pennsylvania that really is nationally renowned and knowledgeable, and did a great report for us in a matter of 10 months and gave us a lot of valuable information. So we're way ahead of I think the rest of the state when it comes to public transportation and planning for EV infrastructure. And the governor, as you said, just this week, I think she recognized that Massachusetts and indeed the entire country is not really moving as fast as you'd like to see. People are contemplating buying an electric vehicle to reduce greenhouse gas, obviously, emissions. And transportation makes up, in Cape Cod, it makes up 55% of our greenhouse gas emissions. So people want to protect the environment. People want to drive nice cars, but you don't want to be driving from, Truro to Falmouth and wonder if you can get back or where you can get charge. Now, there are apps available that identify locations in the region and actually all around the country where you can get charged. But it's still a lot of the technology is still being developed. Um, so people I think are hesitant, but it is going forward, and I do believe that in the years ahead, that's what you're going to see because folks are cognizant of the importance of protecting the air quality, and so I applaud the state for forwarding or investing 50 million in trying to expedite placement of the EV charging infrastructure. I think that the plan, according to some federal legislation, suggests that there'll be that availability every 50 miles across the country. Every 50 miles you can get charged, and again, there's different kinds of EVs. There's Prius and there's Chevy Bolts, and there's different kind of apparatus that you connect to the charging. So there's a lot to it, but and I neglected to say when I mentioned the folks that participated in our meeting yesterday, Steve Tupper, obviously from the Cape Cod Commission. Now, Steve, well, he was probably he and Terry were the most knowledgeable on what exactly is going on. They've been participating in meetings with the state officials on a regular basis. They know what's going on. And Steve, everything he gets involved in, he's very thorough and very smart. And so we had a very good conversation, and we all learned something, and we've decided to, Paul Niedzwiecki, he communicates with his, 1,000 or so chamber members in many hotels. I think he said, I forget exactly what he said, but I think they said that only 4% of the hotels on the Cape have the necessary charging infrastructure there. And if you have an EV and you're driving from any distance to the Cape for a week or two, you want to find out if you can get checked. And unlike other parts of this country, they told us yesterday, like some of the major hotels like Hilton and some of the big ones, they're getting first shrift at all this stuff. And on the Cape, we have Airbnbs and we have older facilities. So the resources aren't as plentiful right off the bat to accommodate those kinds of places. But good stuff is going on. The Cape Cod Commission is really on top of it. That gentleman, Terry Gallagher, on the Assembly, he proposed a resolution that on this coming Wednesday, the county commissioners are going to consider and hopefully approve, and then it'll get some exposure. And I hope maybe you will too, Gray, to give them some exposure. It's a big deal, a resolution passed by the county. And that'll speak well about Bounceville County, recognizing that, some of the resources, the 50 million that's here, and others can continue to help us move forward with this.
Yeah, it's certainly interesting. Our definitely some of our audience members will be familiar with Stephen Tupper. He's been on quite a few times to talk a little bit more about EVs as well as the Cape Cod Canal Bridge Replacement Project. But definitely, I imagine that our listeners are going to be hearing from Mark Forrest sometime soon, depending on how all this stuff kind of shakes out. Now, as well, just from the just to kind of spitball with the consumer angle for a while as well. I myself am someone who's like, well, I might need a new vehicle soon, but there's thinking that there's going to be a resolution saying that they cannot sell a new vehicle in Massachusetts by 2035, I believe the date is, unless it's carbon neutral. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be fully EV. Carbon neutral kind of is a little bit more of a broader umbrella, so it can be like a hybrid vehicle of some kind or use some other kind of fuels. But it is sort of like we're in a weird time. Do you think that there's introduction of rebates for some of these vehicles? But do you think that there's maybe no amount of rebates will help? It's really just going to come down to we need more EVs and the reliability that comes with it. We've just been, as American culture, too grown used to the ability to get off at any exit and just know and take for granted there'll be a gas station just around the corner. Is it really just going to come down to that infrastructure?
Well, I don't want to blow the horn for you, Gary Grady, but you certainly do your homework before every time I've spoken with you, you were right up to speed on some of the issues of interest. And that is an important factor. There are a lot of rebates, there are a lot of opportunities for tax breaks and others to encourage folks into that arena. But even with us, when we were beneficiaries of significant stimulus dollars because of some of our innovative thinking down here. We put deadlines in place, for our strategic plan, our 10-year strategic plan, our 5-year capital plan. We put strategic timeframes in place so that we could, transition over and we're not gonna meet those ambitious timeframes, I don't believe. I mean, it's like 2030, our entire 150 bus fleet is going to be over. But so the things that happen in politics and various governments, but you need to be ambitious about doing it, and we're ahead of everybody else. And so yeah, I think this is the state and the governor's commitment here to forwarding 50 million right away here. I think is an example of the importance, because I think Massachusetts, from what I understand from Steve and Terry yesterday, is really not as advanced as a lot of our other states around the country. So yeah, I think it's coming, and you know a lot depends on the economy, inflation, the politics that's going on in the country. Who knows, who's going to be, what party's going to be in power. There's a lot of things that could influence outcomes, but as a transportation leader, we're trying to, reduce greenhouse gas emissions and create efficient ways to move people around.
Mhm. No, we won't get too political or anything. We're not. That's not really what this show is for. But in election years in general, do you find yourself kind of just holding your breath for a little while, just to wait and see? Maybe have multiple plans in the works for just in case, depending on the outcomes.
Well, my background, I served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives for 14 years. And so my adult life has been, in politics. And I certainly know all of the elected officials around. And had a nice conversation just this morning with Representative Peake and Senator Moran and the entire delegation. And Congressman Keating and I talk, at least once every couple of weeks. So I keep pretty pretty much in touch on what's going on. But I mean, the whole country can see what's going on. There's some real issues in Washington that are really, I think, preventing any meaningful progress from happening on a number of fronts. But I've always said, and I've been involved in transportation after the legislature. I was deputy secretary in the Commonwealth for 10 years. I've always said that transportation should and is somewhat nonpartisan. So, every organization that we talk to, whether it's seniors or whether it's the Cape Organization for the Rights of the Disabled, or if it's any other organization, we ask what their main concern is. Transportation is always one or two on the docket. So yeah, I pay attention, and I have to say, our delegation has been incredibly supportive. I mean, this grant that allowed us to go to free fares came from the state legislature, and Congressman Keating has been with us for a number of years in convincing the Federal Transit Administration about allowing us to do some innovative things that have generated significant more resources to this region. So I don't think that can go on forever, but it certainly has been very, very worthwhile. And I also think that, the team that we have here at the RTA, really cares about making a difference. And we've done so on a number of fronts. I mean, Kathy, leads in so many areas and makes sure that we do these things and we follow through on things. And, I was humbled this morning at the meeting when the delegation, several of them mentioned Cape Cod RTA is, being out front on a number of areas. So, I think if we do that, legislators and funding authorities, the feds and state and others, recognize that their money's being well spent. And so it's kind of fun. And I just don't know what November's going to bring, but, we'll see.
We'll all be staying tuned. I can tell you that much from the CapeCod.com News Center as well. All right. Well, I'm afraid that's about all the time that we have, Tom. But thank you so much for joining me for this conversation. Is there any last comments that you wanted to add for our listeners? A little bit more about the timeline for the study, or where people can learn more if they want to get that new card? Just anything else for our listeners?
I think, I always encourage people to look at our website, capecodrta.org, or call us at any time at 775-8504. And we're happy to be responsive and help anybody that we can. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to make our case.
All right. Awesome, Tom. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
Thank you.